I was alone with my stepson in our new home. Then he said something I couldn't unhear. True heat. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I thought I was alone, until he said the one thing I couldn't unhear. Now I can't forget it. And I don't think I want to. They say moving into a new home is like turning a page, fresh paint. Clean floors. The illusion of a clean slate. I wanted to believe that. I needed to, after years of quiet dinners, timed smiles, and a husband who no longer asked if I was happy. I wanted to feel new again. Not just for us, for me. The house sat on the edge of a wooded hill, tucked away from town, where the wind whispered louder than the people ever did. Tom loved that. He said the silence made him feel peaceful. I, on the other hand, had spent too long inside silences that didn't comfort me. They just made me smaller. I stood in the living room, barefoot, watching the light stretch across the floor. The windows were wide, like promises. The walls, still bare. The whole place smelled like wood and potential. We were supposed to start over here. Fix what had quietly cracked. Rebuild the version of us we used to be. That was the plan. But plans are funny things, fragile and blind to the things already unraveling beneath them. Tom had been trying, in his own way. New home, new routines. Even his tone softened, like he knew I was slipping. Though neither of us dared say it out loud. But love can't be patched with drywall and square footage. I told myself this house would be different. That I could learn to want again. To hope. But what I didn't expect, what I wasn't prepared for, was Tyler. Tom's son from his first marriage. 25, quiet, supposed to be staying with us, just for a while, until he figured out his next move. I'd only seen a handful of photos, graduation, camping trips, a few blurry candids on Tom's phone. He looked polite, distant, safe. He was arriving tomorrow. Tom had told me the night before. Casually, over dinner. You'll like him, he said. He's grounded, smart, kind. I smiled like I was supposed to, nodded like I meant it, but something in me stiffened. Not out of worry, just a flicker of something I couldn't name. A ripple across still water. I went to bed early that night. Told Tom I was tired. I wasn't. I just needed time. To breathe. To think. To remember what it felt like to be seen. To wonder if this house would give me that. Or take even more away. He arrived just after noon. I heard the car before I saw him, gravel crunching. Engine humming, then silence. I wiped my hands on a towel. Heart doing something it hadn't done in a long time, stutter. I told myself it was just nerves. A new chapter, a new dynamic, nothing more. Tom opened the front door with that familiar tone, warm, rehearsed. Tyler, come on in. I expected someone lanky, reserved, maybe distracted by a phone. But the man who stepped into our hallway was composed, confident, tall, a backpack slung casually over one shoulder. His jawline sharp, eyes alert. And when he smiled at me, just for a second, it felt like the room tilted slightly. You must be Marissa, he said, his voice lower than I imagined. Thanks for having me. I extended my hand. Welcome home. Home. The word caught in my throat. For a moment, it felt like I was the guest. Tyler looked around, nodding in quiet approval. Nice place. Feels peaceful. Tom chuckled. She made it that way. His eyes flicked back to me. I can see that. It wasn't flirtation. Not exactly. But there was something in the way he said it, soft. Certain. Like he saw something I hadn't realized I was showing. I stepped back, gestured toward the stairs. Your room's upstairs. End of the hall. Got it, he replied, walking past me. Close. Too close. I watched him disappear up the steps. A strange heat blooming in my chest. It was probably nothing. But I felt it. Like a breeze through a closed window. A shift. Small, but undeniable. The days blurred together in soft, predictable ways. Morning coffee, afternoon emails, Tom working late, Tyler in and out of the house like a shadow, quiet, polite. Always present but never intrusive. He made himself useful, fixed a loose cabinet door, reorganized the tools in the garage without being asked, said, "Good morning," like he meant it. I told myself it was nice. Just nice. But then I started noticing things I wasn't supposed to. How he leaned on the kitchen counter, forearms tense, veins visible, fingertips drumming in rhythm. How he stood too long in doorways, as if waiting for something unsaid. How his gaze lingered, not in a way that crossed any obvious lines, but long enough that I felt my breath catch when I looked up and saw him watching me. I began to shift, subtly. I fixed my hair before heading downstairs. I chose softer fabrics. I wore the lip balm I'd forgotten in the back of a drawer. Nothing loud, nothing obvious, just attentiveness toward myself. One evening, Tom called to say he'd be staying late, again. A budget meeting. I nodded, murmured something supportive. The moment I hung up, I turned and found Tyler at the bottom of the stairs, barefoot, a book in hand. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Just tired." He tilted his head. "You always say that." It wasn't accusation, just observation, but I felt my chest tighten. "I guess I've been tired for a long time," I admitted. Tyler stepped closer, the book still resting against his side. "You shouldn't have to be." His words landed too gently, too close. I turned away before I could respond, pretending to check the stovetop. "Want some tea?" "Sure," he said, "but only if you join me." So we sat, on opposite ends of the couch, mugs in hand, some documentary playing in the background neither of us were really watching. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't empty. It pulsed. And when I stood to take the mugs back to the kitchen, his fingers brushed mine as he handed his over. Just a touch. But it lingered. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tom was next to me, breathing steady, the way he always did after a long day. His hand brushed against mine under the blanket. Reflex. Familiar. But I didn't move. I just stared at the ceiling, the dark pressing down like a weighted silence. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Not yet. But that didn't stop the questions from crawling beneath my skin. Why had that moment stayed with me? Why did I still feel the trace of Tyler's fingers on mine hours later, like warmth that refused to fade? It wasn't about attraction, at least, not entirely. It was something more dangerous than that. It was being noticed. Truly seen, in a way I hadn't felt in years. I kept telling myself to pull back, be cautious, set firmer boundaries, but the more I tried to enforce distance, the more aware I became of the spaces we shared. The hallway, the kitchen, the garden steps in the early morning sun. His presence had a gravity to it, calm, controlled, like he knew what effect he had, and chose to say nothing. And that silence unnerved me. The next morning, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Something about the way I stood, the way I tilted my head, it felt different. Like I was holding myself as someone else might see me. It scared me a little. At breakfast, Tyler offered to fix the back door latch. Said it stuck when it rained. I thanked him, and our eyes met for a second too long. No words, just that tension again, that thread. I looked away first. Because that's what I was supposed to do. Because I was still trying to be good. Still convincing myself I hadn't crossed any lines. Not yet. But deep down, I knew I wasn't standing on solid ground anymore. I was already leaning forward. Just enough for the fall to feel inevitable. The day it happened started off ordinary. Tom had left early for a client meeting in the city. He'd be gone until late. I stood on the back porch with my second cup of coffee, watching the fog drift between the trees. The house was quiet, still holding its breath. Tyler came downstairs barefoot, hoodie half-zipped, his hair still tousled from sleep. He muttered a soft "morning" as he joined me outside, the steam from my cup rising between us. "You always wake up this early?" he asked. I shrugged. Only when it's this quiet. It feels honest, somehow. He leaned against the railing, arms crossed, eyes scanning the woods. I like it here, doesn't feel like anyone's pretending. His voice was low, unhurried, but the words made something catch in my chest. We didn't speak much after that. He made toast. I folded laundry. Time passed gently, like the wind brushing through open windows. That afternoon, I was in the den, stacking books onto shelves we hadn't finished organizing. Tyler walked in holding an old photo album he found in the attic. He set it down between us and sat on the floor, cross-legged. "Your high school yearbook?" he teased, flipping a page. I rolled my eyes. "That's your dad's, actually." He smirked, then paused on a photo of Tom in his 20s. Hard to believe, huh? What? That he was ever that young. That you two were once new. I didn't answer. He looked up. "Do you ever feel stuck, Marissa?" My breath caught. He wasn't being careless. He wasn't provoking me. He was asking. I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Sometimes," I said finally, "sometimes I feel like I'm watching my life instead of living it." He nodded, slow. "Yeah, me too." The room was still, the air thick with something we weren't naming. He reached for a book, passed it to me, our fingers touched. Again. Longer this time. I didn't pull away. I should have. But I didn't. Later that evening, we made dinner together, chopping vegetables, stirring sauce, the space between us narrowing with every movement. At one point, he reached behind me to grab a pan and his hand brushed the small of my back, lightly. Like a question. After we ate, I poured us each a glass of wine. The couch felt smaller than usual. We sat side by side. The movie on in the background, just an excuse to stay in the same room. I could feel the air shifting. Every breath felt louder. He glanced at me once, then again. His knee brushed mine. I didn't move. He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "I like being around you." My heart beat louder than the words. I turned to him. "Tyler?" But before I could say anything else, he spoke again. "I'm not trying to make this complicated. I notice you, that's all." My throat tightened. "You shouldn't say that." "I know." He didn't lean closer. He didn't touch me. He just sat there, still, present. And that, somehow, was more dangerous than if he had. Because I felt it too. The wanting. The ache. The moment hovered, half a breath from becoming something else. But I stood. Gathered our glasses. Said nothing. He didn't stop me. And that silence said everything. The next few days moved like fog, there, but impossible to hold. I busied myself with small things, reorganizing drawers that didn't need organizing, watering plants twice, folding the same blanket 3 times before realizing it didn't matter. I wasn't avoiding Tyler, not exactly, but I wasn't seeking him out either. He seemed to sense the shift. He kept his distance, but not coldly. Just, respectfully, quietly, like he knew the weight of what hadn't happened. And that was the part one couldn't stop circling in my head. It didn't happen. But it almost did. And somehow, that was worse. Because it meant I wanted it. One evening, I found Tom sitting on the porch with 2 glasses of wine. The sun was melting behind the trees, turning the sky a muted gold. He patted the seat beside him. "You've been quiet lately." I sat, took the glass, forced a small smile, just adjusting. He nodded slowly. "I know this move was more for me than for you. But I'm glad you're trying." I looked at him, his face kind but tired. And for a second, guilt rose like a tide. I didn't say anything, just clinked my glass against his and took a sip. Later that night, I heard footsteps outside the kitchen. I turned from the sink and saw Tyler, heading for the door, He paused when he saw me. Going out? I asked, keeping my voice light. Just a walk. Couldn't sleep. I nodded. Be careful. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Always. Then he was gone, swallowed by the dark. That night, I dreamed of things I shouldn't. Woke tangled in sheets and questions I couldn't answer. The next morning, Tom left for a weekend work retreat, 2 nights. Maybe 3. He kissed my cheek, said, "Don't forget to breathe a little while I'm gone." I watched his car disappear down the gravel road. And just like that, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Tyler came into the kitchen around 10. We moved around each other carefully. Small smiles, short sentences, a dance we hadn't learned but somehow knew by heart. I told myself it was under control, that nothing would happen. But something already had. Not with hands. With silence. With looks. With choices neither of us had yet made, but both felt coming. And all it would take was one small moment to break everything open. It happened on a Sunday. Late afternoon, the sky was overcast, humming with the promise of rain. I had been in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring something I no longer remember. Tyler was behind me, leaning against the counter, watching quietly like he always did. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone was louder than words. I turned, handed him a bowl to set on the table, and our fingers touched again. This time I didn't pull away. This time, I held his gaze. And he didn't look away either. There was no rush, no heat, just stillness, thick and trembling. A pause that asked everything and answered nothing. And then, slowly, he stepped closer. His hand brushed mine. My breath caught. And then the door opened. I hadn't heard the car. I hadn't heard the footsteps. But Tom was there, in the doorway, holding a set of folders, and looking straight at us. The silence cracked. He didn't shout. Didn't throw anything. He just stared. At me. At Tyler. At everything he thought he understood, now unraveling in the space between us. "Wow," he said, so softly it felt cruel. "I guess I really should have called first." I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Tyler stepped back, jaw clenched. He didn't speak either. Tom nodded slowly, then walked to the front door, opened it wide, and said only one thing. "Out, both of you." That night, I packed a small bag. No explanations, no arguments, just a stillness so deep. It felt like punishment. I don't remember the drive, only the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Now, sitting in a borrowed guest room hours later, I stare at the ceiling and wonder. Was it worth it? Was being seen, truly seen, for just one moment worth destroying everything I thought I was? I don't have the answer. All I know is this. I didn't plan for any of it. But once it started, I couldn't look away. And maybe that says more than I'm ready to admit. 3 weeks have passed. The days blur together in the same gray light. I'm staying with a friend across town. A quiet space, spare bedroom, mornings filled with coffee and polite questions she's too kind to push. She doesn't ask why I left. I think she already knows. Tom hasn't called. Not once. And I haven't tried either. What would I say? That I miss the life I broke? That I still fold my shirts the way he liked them, even though he'll never see? Tyler, he reached out once. A short message, no blame, no pressure. Just, "I hope you're okay." I still think about that moment. I didn't respond. Because I do too. But thinking about it and living inside it are different things. Sometimes at night, I still feel the way the air thickened in that house. The way the silence between us grew louder than words. I remember the sound of Tom's voice when he said, "Out." Not in anger, just in defeat. That's what stays with me most. Not the touch. Not the kiss that never happened. But the breaking. The soft unraveling of something that was once whole. I walk more now. I breathe slower. I talk less. But I think more. And every now and then, in the quiet just before sleep, I hear his voice again. Not Tom's. Tyler's. That moment in the kitchen. The one that tilted everything. "I notice you, that's all." It wasn't a confession. It was a mirror. And maybe that's the part I'll never unhear. I passed by the house today. I didn't plan to. I was running an errand nearby. And the street just came up. Funny how places carry breath even when they're silent. The porch light was off. The blinds drawn. But I swear I could still feel the heat of that final moment, still caught between the doorway and the words that ruined us. I didn't stop. I didn't turn in. But my fingers gripped the steering wheel just a little tighter. There's something about being seen that leaves a trace. Not the obvious kind, not the kind people point at. It's quieter than that. It lives under your skin. A hum, a thread, a memory stitched just beneath your everyday self. I see it now when I look in the mirror. Not shame. Not even regret. Just difference. The woman staring back isn't the same one who smiled politely at dinner tables and said she was fine. She's quieter now, but more awake. Some nights, I still catch myself listening for footsteps down the hall. And other nights, I lie still, breathing deeply, grateful that no one's coming. I don't know where Tyler is now. I don't ask. I don't search. Because whatever that was, whatever it could have become, was never meant to last beyond that house. It wasn't a romance. It wasn't love. It was a recognition. Of loneliness, of longing, of the deep, aching need to be known before you disappear entirely into someone else's version of you. That moment in the kitchen? It was never about the words he said. It was about the space they cracked open. A space I still carry with me. And maybe that's the most dangerous kind of betrayal. Not what you do in the dark. But what you wake up knowing you'll never forget. I donated the blouse last week. The one I wore that day in the kitchen, the soft gray one with the loose neckline and sleeves that hugged my arms. I folded it carefully, slower than necessary, and placed it into a bag with a few other things I hadn't worn since. It was just fabric. But it carried too much memory. Not the memory of touch. But the memory of pause. Of breath held. Of choice almost made. There's something sacred in the moments we almost cross a line. They sit between who we were and who we almost became, never quite letting us return to either version fully. That's where I live now. In the space between. I've started journaling again, not daily, just enough to remind myself I still have a voice. One that doesn't belong to anyone else, not to Tom, not to Tyler, not to the woman I was before any of it. A voice that doesn't need to explain. Just to exist. Some nights, I still dream of that house. Not the kitchen, not the porch, but the mirror in the upstairs hallway, the one I passed each morning. In the dream, I stop in front of it. I stare longer than I should. I'm not younger. I'm not older. I'm just real, present, like someone who finally sees herself for who she is, not just how others see her. Tom filed the divorce papers. It was quiet, clean, no fights, no begging. We met once to sign. He didn't look angry, just tired. "I hope you find what you were looking for," he said. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I had, or if I ever would. But I'm closer now. Closer than I've ever been.